You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
Yeah, I don't expect to see that one on MSNBC tonight. He's not the only one. It's, when Democrats say things that are somewhat racist, it comes across as cute, right? Like when Hillary does it.
As I introduce her, I want to end with her favorite quote, because I love this quote. It's from Mahatma Gandhi. He ran a gas station down in St. Louis for a couple of years. Mr. Gandhi, you can still go to the gas station? A lot of wisdom comes out of that gas station.
Yeah. Can you imagine any Republican saying anything like that? It'd be headline news. All right, my next guest is a Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow and Professor of English at the University of Houston downtown, Adam Ellwanger. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Okay, so what is the language police now or after the words mother and father?
Yeah. Springfield College recently issued some guidelines to students, and in addition to telling them how to use the neopronouns, they also advise students that they eliminate terms like mother and father from their language use in favor of the term parent, so that we don't discriminate in terms of gender or sex.
Whatever happened to cisgender or non-binary or even transgender birthing person?
All of those are there. They're not going to leave anybody out. They're making sure to cover all of their bases. Surprisingly, Springfield College is not the first to do this. This is a much broader trend on the cultural left and in our universities. Leadership Institute's Campus Reform has reported similar guidelines at universities like University of Massachusetts Amherst, University of Kansas, University of Wisconsin-Madison. So this is part of a much broader campaign to control the words that are used on campus.
Is this Leninism? Give me the schools for 4 years and I'll plant a seed that can't be uprooted? Or do you see a backlash? I don't know. I'm long past my eye rolling and maybe even somewhat rebellious years, but I could just think of myself as an 18-year-old. If somebody said, let's not say mother and father, I'd be like, whatever. I wouldn't go along with it. But I don't know. Is Generation Z a little bit more malleable and open to this stuff?
I think that they are. I think that they have endured guidelines like this throughout their education. So they're coming to campus, many of them, already acclimated to this. Of course, as an English professor, I know that attempts to control the language that we use are attempts to police our thoughts. They're ways to eliminate what we can and can't think. And what the university is trying to do here is to erase any difference between male parenthood, fatherhood, and female parenthood, motherhood. And of course, as we know, mothers and fathers contribute very different things to children, and that both parents are necessary to really nurture a child and have them thrive.
I think back to the 80s. If you put that parent advisory sticker on an album, people wanted to buy it just to hear what it was all about. And if there was a word you were told, hey, you don't use that word, that was the first word that came out of your mouth when whoever told you not to use it turned their back. That's why I asked this question. I realize the power of generations, whether it's the baby boomers or Generation X, right? The culture changes with every generation. Generations have a different view of marriage or work life, but there's also pendulums that swing. And when you push people enough, when you just push enough idiocy, sooner or later, a portion of that generation is going to go, okay, this is stupid. I'm not playing along. But then again, when you're dealing with the people that hold your grade point average hostage, you kind of are fearful.
Yeah, if memory serves, Andrew, you used to be an alternative rock radio host, and yeah. I was a young teenager listening to alternative rock radio, and I do think that a long time has passed. I think that this generation is much more risk averse, And you're right, they understand who the boss is, that professors are the ones that assign grades, and in fact, that those grades will be seen by prospective employers, and so they're very happy to toe the line. The sad thing is that it's the children, the future children of this generation, that loses when these young people have been brought up to believe that one family structure is just as good as any other and just as viable for the successful raising of a child.
You know, when I look at the Bud Light backlash or the Target backlash, I think what happens eventually and inevitably, and I've been reading a lot on the pushback to some of this stuff that, you know, people were so deathly afraid to be overheard saying, you know, words that made someone uncomfortable in the workplace. But when you see enough people who are getting, you know, fired or expelled or failing for doing things that deep in your heart, you know, are not dangerous or offensive, or at least not meant to be offensive. The idea that because somebody's simply uncomfortable or upset, that you don't tell them to, you know, grow up or get over it. This is the real world. That you take their rage and you take it out on whoever upset them. I've said on, you know, speaking of radio, I remember in communications class, we studied the structure of a message. There was the sender, the receiver, and the medium by which the message was sent. So that could be broadcast television or a hand gesture, whatever it is you're talking about. And we would analyze the message from the point of what did the person mean when they said it. Now we analyze the message from how people react to it. Now, you could always ask the person, what did you mean by that? That's how you get clarification. If you're just dealing with the emotional reaction, anybody can be offended at anything, and then by that standard, nobody's safe.
Yeah, in fact, the really interesting thing, I study rhetoric, so I'm familiar with what you're talking about. We don't even know how the audience receives these messages. We know how they say they receive them. They say that these messages are offensive, but we don't know. Do they actually feel that way? Often I think that they don't. And we see this in the assertions of things like toxic masculinity, which is also something they're associating with fatherhood. But everybody's against toxic masculinity until they need a police officer or until there's an active shooting. And then we find that these traditional ideas of what it is to be a man, traditional virtues like bravery, courage, strength, all of a sudden, in an instant, these come right back into fashion. So I do think that there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on in how the campus left claims they react to some of the language that we're talking about.
I got to be honest with you. I can only my college experience was in the 90s. We called it political correctness. But still, we believed that college was where you were supposed to go to be exposed to things that made you uncomfortable, that challenged you, that you learned the art of debate. You confronted things that you'd never seen before and things that might even offend you. That was part of the maturing process from freshman to senior or maybe grad school, that you saw and engaged in things that got you outside your comfort zone and you grew. Now it's stay in your safe bubble, your cry closet, hold your therapy pillow or your therapy stuffed animal.